Smells like football, baby.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Smackdown. This is the Waiver Wire show ahead of Week 11, and there are some decent ads this week on the wire. This is probably the best Waiver Wire show we've had as far as available options in quite some time, so looking forward to this week. If you've been saving that that waiver priority, this is probably the week to go after it. With the playoffs closing in just about 4 weeks away for most of us, you got to make those final moves to get that roster ready to go to make a run at the ship. Of course, I'm your host, Kyle August. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleMonth8, and appreciate you tuning on into this show. Whether you're listening on podcasts, rate and review, subscribe, or watching on YouTube, make sure you are tuned in to everything here on the DWZ network because we're year round. So these great shows are going to keep continuing through the off season, get you set for Dynasty season, rookie drafts, all those great things. So appreciate you guys tuning into this show and all of the other shows here on the network. So just dive right in this thing, get this show started. There are, like I said, some decent ads, but before we get to that, 4 teams on bye in Week 11, Jacksonville, Miami, Seattle, and Tampa Bay, have a few weeks still to come with some pretty big bye weeks coming at us still. So waiver wire sniping is going to be important. Continue to stay subscribed here on the network for that show every Saturday and Sunday on the podcast feed. Top 3 ads, regardless of position. Of course, Yahoo ownership under 50% owned is the threshold, and Isaiah Pacheco, 24% owned, surprisingly, way under owned, especially when you consider the fact that it has finally happened. The Chiefs and Andy Reid have moved to a 2-man backfield as Clyde Edwards-Helaire was pretty much shoved out, only 4 snaps on Sunday. No touches for him. Pacheco, after an early fumble in that game, was still the bell cow running downs back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jerick McKinnon will continue to see passing work, but Pacheco has worked his way not only as the starter, but the lead back now in Kansas City. Rachaad White, speaking of being a starter, 34% owned, was the starter for Tampa Bay, was seeing a pretty decent split with Leonard Fournette in his favor. Fournette banged up late in that game overseas. Now the Bucs are heading into a bye week, but White is still a guy that should be much more owned, 34% owned. Do not forget about him. And Donovan Peoples-Jones continues to put up tons of yardage, 35% owned. The Browns wide receiver has been, honestly, the top wide receiver in terms of yardage over the last month for Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson's just a few weeks away. QB streamers doesn't look good, honestly. I mentioned the teams on bye. Hopefully, those aren't quarterbacks you've been relying on, but if you're streaming, it continues to be the name, Marcus Mariota. I know he struggled against Carolina this last week, but it gets a great matchup at home with 10 days rest. The Atlanta Falcons quarterback going up against the Chicago Bears, 33% owned. Marcus Mariota leads this one off. After that, it gets ugly, people. Taylor Heineke at Houston, 13% owned, not playing particularly well tonight on Monday Night Football as I'm recording this, but against the Houston Texans could be an option. You're looking for 2 touchdowns out of any of these streaming quarterbacks outside of Mariota, where you're looking at some rushing production there. Ryan Tannehill at Green Bay, 13% owned. And then Kenny Pickett versus Cincinnati, 12% owned. The rushing yardage has been there, getting around 40 to 50 rushing yards from Pickett the last couple weeks. So it is gross. I mentioned that this is the best waiver wire show that we've had as far as options go in quite some time, but that is not the quarterback position. This is one of the grossest weeks that I've seen as far as streamers go. If you've been streaming and if you're in playoff position, you should own Deshaun Watson if he's for some reason available in your league, still 37% owned. He'll be back to practice with the Browns this week as he looks to return in later this month. Running backs, here we go. Isaiah Pacheco, top of the board, 24% owned. Mentioned him as the starter, getting all the rushing downs work for Kansas City. That's a good sign. Rachaad White, 34% owned, been hyping him up for a while. Mentioned he was the only show in town. Well, Tampa showed their hand. They made him the starter last week against Seattle, and heading into the bye week with Fournette banged up. I think even when they come out, Fournette, maybe he plays. That according to Schefter, he could. Doesn't matter. White right now looks like he's going to be the lead back. Now, it might be an even split, but I still want to have Rachaad White on my rosters. Gus Edwards, 49% owned. He's just below that threshold, which is he dropped due to injury to the bye weeks. Gus Edwards, though, was expected to return as the Ravens headed into their bye week, so hopefully that's still the case coming out. Number 4 is Alexander Mattison. His ownership continues to fall at 40% owned. He is definitely not seeing much of a time split with Dalvin Cook, but he is the top handcuff right now in the NFL. I would be adding Alexander Mattison if I have extra roster spots. Jaylen Warren, 27% owned. His ownership jumped about 20% this last week due to a lot of positive reports. Didn't necessarily show up on Sunday in a big way, but still saw a pretty decent split with Najee Harris there in Pittsburgh. And number 6 is Kyren Williams at 41% owned. I actually expect his ownership to drop this week, which would be a mistake. He saw a pretty decent workload for his first game back injury and his first game in the NFL, don't forget. This kid was injured all off season, missed obviously a huge chunk of the season here, and he still saw a decent enough workload his first time out. I expect him to be worked in more and more into this Rams offense. Wide receiver, I mentioned Donovan Peoples-Jones. He continues to put up 60-plus yards. He's done it each of the last 5 games. Donovan Peoples-Jones at 35% owned. Could be somebody that you're starting for the next couple weeks as a bye week filler. But once Deshaun Watson gets back, let's go, baby. Donovan Peoples-Jones could turn into an every week flex for you right now. Christian Watson, big 3-touchdown game, only 9% owned. He's available almost everywhere. So if he is available, you can definitely spend up. I prefer Donovan Peoples-Jones because I'm not convinced that this Green Bay offense after 1 week is just cured. But Watson did get some opportunities in this game for sure, and he made the most of them. Christian Watson, 9% owned, is my number 2 wide receiver add. There's a bit of a cliff here after those 2 guys, in my opinion. But Jarvis Landry, first game back after a while, and I think there's a prospect that we're going to see Jameis Winston under center, and I think that would be a positive for Jarvis Landry. No Michael Thomas, obviously, going forward. Olave should be the number 1 still, but Landry could still be a flex-worthy play in PPR leagues. Number 4 is Paris Campbell. His quarterback change apparently already happened, 18% owned. Late Sunday afternoon, there he is, Matt Ryan. Boom, Paris Campbell fantasy value. As long as Matt Ryan stays the quarterback for Indianapolis, an 18% owned Paris Campbell should be rostered. Number 5, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We saw Mecole Hardman banged up last week. We saw Juju banged up in that game. Scary situation there. But MVS could be the lead wide receiver in a rotation for the Kansas City Chiefs, 41% owned. Another little drop off here, but I'm willing to stash these guys. Michael Gallup, 42% owned, has struggled as of late, but working his way back from injury, hoping that we start seeing him turn the corner. The Dallas Cowboys matchups the rest of the way are pretty good as far as for fantasy impact. So Michael Gallup still a guy I'm looking to roster. Number 7, Treylon Burks. Played third fiddle for the Tennessee Titans this last week. We're all going to see him on Thursday Night Football this week. But at 20% owned, I still want this rookie wide receiver on my roster just to see if he starts clicking. Number 8 is Jahan Dotson. Not a ton after in his first week back. Again, recording this just before the end of Monday Night Football, so adjust accordingly. But at 22% owned, Dotson's still a guy I'm looking to stash. Number 9 is Nico Collins. Hit pay dirt this last week, 13% owned. Brandon Cooks pissed some people off, to be honest, so get stripped of his captaincy. There you go. But Nico Collins has been fine when he's been on the field this season and could see even more work, potentially as the number 1 wide receiver on this Texans offense. Take that for what it's worth. And then Ben Skoranek, the wide receiver for the LA Rams. He's been on the field all season. The Rams seem to be hesitant to give Van Jefferson much work. Jefferson did catch a late touchdown in that game, but I think that's fool's gold for fantasy owners. He was not really on the field whatsoever prior to that. Skoranek could be the answer there in LA. As long as Matthew Stafford is back under center, Skoranek could have fantasy value there. Might argue he's the top fantasy option there, but that might be saying more about Allen Robinson than Skoranek. Tight end streamers. There's a few I like here. Juwan Johnson's been a freaking touchdown machine. He gets the Rams this week at home, 12% owned. Foster Moreau had a touchdown, could have had 2 on Sunday as he fills in for Darren Waller. That will continue. At Denver, 17% owned. Don't love the matchup, but I think you're hoping for that 4 or 5 catches, hoping for pay dirt for Moreau. And number 3, returning off the bye week, going up against Pittsburgh, Hayden Hurst, 48% owned. His ownership dropped after a few disappointing weeks and Cincinnati heading into the bye week. But I still think you can stream Hurst, but I would prefer Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, ahead of Hayden Hurst. DST streamers, Cincinnati Bengals coming off the bye week, going to be on the road against a divisional opponent, but his name is Kenny Pickett. And I don't expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to put up a ton of points. 27% owned. Cincinnati should find the quarterback and a few turnovers as well in that one. And number 2 on this DST stream list, very close. The New York Jets, feels weird to say, but they've been actually pretty solid for fantasy. In Yahoo standard scoring 7 or more points over the last 5 weeks. They get the New England Patriots, also coming off a bye week there. So pretty even divisional matchup on the road as well for the Jets. 20% owned. I'm okay streaming them in week 11. All right, there you have it. Appreciate you guys checking out this show. I will be back on Saturday with Waiver Wire sniping, but stay tuned in for the rest of the week. War games coming at you, Dynasty Warzone, of course, and Dallas dropping knowledge as always. So appreciate you guys checking out this one. I'll catch you guys on the weekend.